Welcome back to another edition of the Get Made podcast. I'm your host, Hassan Clay, and I have a fabulous program for you today. I'm going to hit you with it real quick and hard, and I want y'all to really just ride along with me. Always, I thank everybody who have been tuning in. Give us for last week. We had a glitch. Seemed like we had another glitch going today, but we're going to overcome that one too, right? And I want to jump into this week's podcast. So, grounded masculinity, that's been my thing since I started with the Get Made podcast because that's something that is very dear to my heart. We've heard a lot about toxic masculinity, uh, hyper masculinity, and all these type of things here. Other than something, there's always something that's always negative when it comes to manhood and masculinity. And really, on a real note, there's always something that some woman has actually sitting there coming up from an academic point of view about masculinity, right? In my opinion, is probably a lot of feminists, right, who are doing it. But hey, that's another subject for another time. But I want to talk to us today about how we brothers, men, adjusting the crown, can be in a position of really getting grounded in our masculinity. And I have 5 C's. We want to see our way to masculinity. That was the title of this podcast today. I've got 5 C's that's going to get us there. And I want you to ride along with me. Buckle up. Here we go. So our first one is always going to be about competence. And you guys may have checked out my live a couple of weeks ago from the Black Iftar, right? And it was in part one and part two. If you didn't, go back and check it out. But you really don't have to because I'm going to give it all to you right here. And I'm going to give it to you straight with no cut, with no chaser, and with no interruptions. All right. So that first one, competence. When we start talking about competence, what we're really talking about is having a knowledge base about what manhood really is, right? We have been conditioned to have this warped understanding of manhood. So we now have to unlearn and relearn certain things, right? I think the psychologist Kurt Lewin came out with that many, many years ago, talking about unlearning and relearning, right? And so there has been a conditioning that has taken place within the community of manhood, that then says that this is what masculinity is. This hyper macho, hyper gangster, whatever you want to call it, this is what manhood is, right? It has to be something to where it has to be very aggressive in order to be a man. It has to be very uh, dogmatic, if you will. I got to have this sternness, this so-called fierceness. That's not really fierceness at all. Is really right. Is really something that is being portrayed as being fierce. Right. Is really something that we have learned that is not conducive to overall true leadership of a community, leadership of a wife, leadership of our children. And then there's the other part of this is where you got the guy who's just really syrupy sensitive, right? Sensitive to everything. If the wind blow, he crying, right? If I mean, this guy really look at these chick flicks, right? And he started crying more than a woman's crying, right? And I'm not trying to be a little stereotypical here. And I'm not trying to talk about women in this way. I'm just giving an example of what it is that I'm talking about. So you have these two extremes that take place, right? this guy who's like ultra macho, he get a can, crush it on his head, or he's very loud, very boisterous, very aggressive. Then you got this guy who's super soft, who's super sensitive, who's catering to every whim of women and different things in nature there. And I'm even going to show you something. They even dress this way, right? All these tight clothes, all these super tight clothes, these tight pants, and these tight jerk jackets and shirts and all this whole type of stuff here. That's a feminist movement. That's a feminist action that's taking place. I won't even call it feminist. That's a feminine action that's taking place, that's being introduced into manhood, right? And some people give it this sexy name, call it metrosexual, right? What I'm trying to say is that we have to learn something different than that. We have to learn how to be compassionate and still be firm. We have to learn how to be gentle but be firm, right? We have to have some empathy, right? We have to learn how to be empathetic and still be firm, right? There's no such thing as firmness has to leave. Sternness may need to be done away with, but firmness is not firmness. You still have to stand your ground. Again, we talk about grounded masculinity, right? But there are certain things that you are going to learn in this. We have to learn on how to be better men, better gentlemen, if you will, or just in a position of having some daggone common sense. I would say something else, but coming out of Ramadan, so I want to keep it. I want to keep it halal just a little bit more, right? And so, but we have to learn how to be just a little bit more compassionate toward. There's nothing wrong with a little compassion. I'll be honest with you. There's nothing even wrong with crying, right? It doesn't make you soft because you cry, right? I know the greatest of men who we know within our example of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he cried, right? He kissed his grandkid children on the cheek and things of that nature there. He showed some tenderness, right? But yet and still he was mighty, he was smooth with the sword, right? He get in where he needed to get in, right? So there is this balance that he really kind of had when we are talking about being a man. So he learned, in this instance, he was a person who learned how to really be cool with his masculinity, be firm upon his masculinity. The next one, and I've already kind of give it away in a sense, is going to be congruency, being balanced, how to maintain that balance, how to be right in the middle of being hard and being soft, right? Being being reasonable, but also being about your business, being on business, right? And being able to make a decision, but also keep in mind the other people who are around you, you're making decisions for, or who you're going to make some decisions on their behalf, right? You have to really learn how to be balanced in that, not going too far to the left or too far to the right. So congruency is truly a hallmark of grounded masculinity, right? And we're talking about these pillars here of masculinity, right? And so then being consistent. And I know you guys always see me talking about being consistent. You have to be in a position of letting people understand. Look, they can set their watch to you, knowing that how to time you, how to make sure. Look, I know that this person is going to show up like this. They're going to have some follow up, some follow through. They're going to be consistent about what it is that they show up for work. They're not calling out. They're not getting their check and then deciding to call out today, and they're not taking a break from dealing with their kids or dealing with their family. They're consistent about how they show up. So then next, having this thing called connection, right? We're gonna run through four of them real quick. One out the fourth one right now. Connection, making sure that you can connect all the dots that need to be connected within your life, within the life of the people who you have charge over, and not only that, in even the community, making sure that you have connection, that you are plugged in to other men, right? Plugged into your family, plugged into to over if it's institutions, if it's groups, if it's your place of worship, if it's your organizations, you having some type of plug in that you are dialed in, so therefore you can be of some greater good to humanity, right? If we're not plugged in, that means that we are on an island by ourselves. That means that we have all the answers, that we don't need anybody to give us any answers. We're not asking any questions, right? I got it all. I don't need nobody else. That's not even how life works. We all need one another, right? And so therefore, I'm going to ask some people who know. I have other men who, when I'm not quite sure about something, I say, hey, look, give me some guidance on this. Help me out with this. Or whatever it is, might be the language that me and that person may use, right? Help me out. Help me see this from another perspective, because I don't know. I feel like this is where I'm going, but I might be dialed in wrong. So that's connection, right? And last but not least, having care, right? Caring it. One word, one phrase that I cannot stand to hear is people saying that I don't care. I don't, what's it, IDC, I don't care, right? That is so unhumane. That is inhumane, or whatever you want to call it. It's not human not to care. And as grounded men, we have to care. We have to care about our family. We have to care about the community at large. We have to care about ourselves, right? We have to take care of self, right? That's where you're first going to start to care at. How are you taking care of yourself? Are we trying to eat proper? Are we trying to make sure we're maintaining our weight properly? Are we trying to exercise properly? Are we reading and getting information and knowledge and things of that nature there? Are we really just embracing, things that make our hearts soft so we can care for someone else or for somebody else other than our little just collective tribe or our little collective clan, if you will, right? So in that, you have to be in a position of saying, how do I show care? What is it that I can do? So let's run back through these last five right quick, right? Because I think it's important. And I want to hear your comments on this page. Of course, all comments are welcome. I love to have a discussion about what it is that we're talking about. But I want you to know that first, being competent, right? Competence actually leads to confidence. Because if you have some understanding, you have some knowledge about a situation, then that means you can be confident about how you move. I know it's a scholar who once said that knowledge precedes speech and action, right? So if we are then looking at just knowing what we know before we start speaking on something and doing something, then that means we can move with confidence. A lot of times we have confidence, which is really arrogance, right? Because we don't know, right? We move without the knowledge of really knowing what it is. So we make a lot of mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes because we don't know. We just out here moving, haphazardly moving. We just doing things. We're not really taking into consideration what is really taking place or what needs to take place. That goes back to the care, right? So if we having this competence, that means we're developing this confidence. Then that means then we're going to be congruent, right? We're going to have some balance. We ain't going to be too hot or too cold. We ain't going to take our highs too high and our lows too low. We're gonna stand right there in the middle. That don't means we're gonna be stoic or we're gonna be flat tone or anything in nature there. That means we're gonna be deliberate, right? We're gonna be deliberate and we're gonna maintain the line. We're gonna hold the line of what real masculinity looks like, or what grounded masculinity looks like. So when we start talking about this congruence, this balance, then we're going to be consistent about it, right? We're going to maintain consistency. We're going to make sure that we always follow up. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. Then we're going to follow up with what it is, and we're going to make sure that even the people who then are following us have a clear understanding about what it is that we're doing. That's going to be consistent. They can set their watch to you at that point. Then next we talk about connected. We're going to make sure that we stay plugged in, right? We're going to make sure that we stay linked in, locked in to other men, and being in our places of worship or in our organizations or whatever our institutions might be. We want to make sure that we stay plugged in, right? This is drawing connection. That means I can be of service to someone else as well as I get services from someone else, right? This is everybody being together. This is somebody not saying, I don't need nobody else. I'm all right, but I don't need that. I used to want, man, you talk about somebody who used to have that. And probably this is where I got tested. God tested me mightily with that when I lost my vision, because I used to be the one who was always saying, I don't need nobody to do nothing for me. I got this. I'm handling this. Then he took this thing away from me. Now I'm definitely dependent on people now, right? Even when I don't want to, I have to depend on somebody. That means that takes that haughtiness out of me. And I have to really work on that. And a lot of us work from that position because we've been taught something different about manhood. And so now we get to that last thing of caring. And caring is really probably an important part, because a lot of things that are happening out here right now in this world is because people really have become, you know, unsympathetic or lack empathy for one another. And this is a part of caring. They really get to a point to where they can walk past someone and not even care. They can walk past the homeless. They can walk past somebody who's sick. They can walk past. I know a sister told me one time that she saw a man beating a woman in the middle of the street. And of course, she called the police, and she said she just saw people just drive around her. He's in the middle of the street, got this on top of the woman, just banging her, right? And they just drive around, just in the middle of the street, just drove around it. Like, hey, don't stop, care, get this man off this woman. But no, they like, oh, that ain't my problem. No, that ain't me. That ain't my family he's jumping on. Why would I care? Why should I care? Right? So when we start looking at manhood from a grounded position, that means we're taking up a true banner. That means we're taking up leadership. That means that we're being in the forefront of what it is that we need to do as men, right? And we're not just being males, right? We are practicing manhood without a shadow of dominance, because we don't have to be dominant. You don't have to show I'm your superior to anybody else. You just got to be you, because God created you this way. All that other stuff that you're talking about is really not from God. It's not from Allah, right? He tells us in the book how to be men. He gives us an example of manhood. That is true grounded masculinity. That is firm rooted masculinity. So I want y'all to think about that. I jumped on here real quick. Of course, I'm having some interviews coming up for the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to share that with you because that's been on my heart. It's been on my mind for several weeks now. Just listening to different things that come across my desk, different things that come across I read in social media, and various different things that really has made me, it touched my heart to really say, hey, look, have this conversation with your people, with your brothers. And again, we're talking about adjusting the crown of our brothers, right? Have this conversation with your brothers. You know, have this understanding or get this understanding, because if we all start making the move, then what's going to happen? Little boy's going to have to get out the way. Real talk. When tough times come, that's when real men show up. Let me change that, because I don't really care for that real man mantra. That's when developed men show up. But when times have been in ease, that's when them little boys start taking over. Right? This is a time for developed men. We are in a time for the developed men to step up and make it happen. And so this is what this podcast is all about. Getting made, manhood, accountability, development, and enrichment. This is what this is all about. I need y'all just like y'all. I think hopefully you would need me. Right? So got a few things that we're going to take care of with that. Got some classes I don't want to be able to pull out there. And got some books that I'm finishing up a book on service. I actually simultaneously writing 2 books, believe it or not, blind man writing 2 books, right? So I got a couple of books that I'm trying to really get out there probably after May. Hopefully by June, it should be out there, right? I'm going to talk about it more as we get going. And got some classes that I'm going to put out there as well. So we're going to get this thing right. I'm going to do my part. I'm not the resource. I'm just a guide to a resource, right? I'm at the end game. I'm not the end game. I'm just trying to help us get to the end, right? So, of course, subscribe to my channel on YouTube, the Get Made Podcast. I know sometimes they got this thing on how to get made that pops up first. If you got me in the search bar, just keep searching. I'm right there. I'm like maybe the second, third one down, right? So check me out. Please subscribe. I need more subscriptions. Also, share, share this podcast with other people. Tell other people about this podcast, please. We want to get the word out. We want people to make sure that we get tuned in. Brothers and sisters. Sisters, y'all need to tune in too. So you can point your brothers in this direction. Your brothers, your man, any man in your life, all that. You can point them in this direction as well. Right? Also, we got these stars on this Facebook page, right? Please hit those stars, because this is how I actually kind of keep pushing this information out, start getting more viewers. Hey, real talk, it's not putting it in my pocket. I'm actually trying to keep pushing this information out. And of course, I would love some help in doing that. So by all means, please hit them stars, donate to it, hit them stars. And I want to let you know that I really appreciate you. I love you. And we're going to see you guys next week.